The staff at the Gilded Ledge had a rule: never make eye contact with Table 12. They would trade shifts, fake illnesses, and even quit just to avoid the man who sat there. Conrad Prescott wasn't just a billionaire, he was a black hole of courtesy, a man who feasted on the fear of those he considered beneath him. For years, everyone followed the rule. Everyone bowed, everyone broke, until the day Amaris Hayes started her shift. She was new, she was quiet, and she was the only one who didn't know she was supposed to be afraid. Or perhaps she was the only one with nothing left to lose. The Gilded Ledge was not a restaurant, it was a performance. Suspended 40 stories above the city, its floor-to-ceiling windows presented a glittering panorama that few could afford. The clientele was a silent money mix of old-world trust funds and new-world tech barons. The staff, in turn, were not mere waiters, but choreographed dancers in a nightly ballet of silent, impeccable service. Amaris Hayes, tying the starched white linen apron around her waist, felt the familiar knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. This was her third shift. She was still learning the geography of the kitchen, the specific angle at which to present a wine bottle, and the unwritten, ironclad rules of the staff. The most important rule she was learning was, avoid Conrad Prescott. "He's coming tonight," whispered Chloe, a senior waitress, whose hands trembled slightly as she polished a row of Riedel glasses. 7 p.m, on the dot. He's always on the dot. "Who?" Amaris asked, trying to sound casual. Mark, a sommelier who usually carried himself with the confidence of a diplomat, just shook his head. "Don't say his name. You'll summon him." "It's Mr. Prescott," said Mr. Henderson, the restaurant's general manager, gliding up to them. Henderson was a man who looked perpetually apologetic, as if the weight of the world's thread counts and wine temperatures rested solely on his slim shoulders. And Chloe is correct. He is precise. "Is he really that bad?" Amaris asked. Chloe let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Last month, he sent back his water, said the ice was too aggressive. The month before, he claimed Mark's decanting of a 1982 Lafite was performative and insulting, and had it taken off the bill. He doesn't just complain, Amaris. He dissects. He finds your weakest point, the one thing you're insecure about, and he presses down until you crack." "Brenda quit in the middle of her shift," Mark added in a low voice. He told her that her perfume, which she wasn't even wearing, was a desperate cry for attention. She burst into tears and walked out. "He is," Henderson summarized, straightening his tie, "our most important patron and our most difficult." He looked directly at Chloe. "You'll be taking him, as usual. Just be strong." Chloe turned a pale shade of green. "Mr. Henderson, I don't feel well. My migraine. It's coming back." Henderson's eyes closed for a brief second. He knew she was lying. She knew he knew, but the unspoken truce was that no one would force the issue. He looked around the briefing room. Mark was suddenly fascinated by the wine cellar inventory. The other servers were studying the specials menu as if it were a holy text. "I can't take him," one waiter muttered. "My section is full." "I have the party of 8, said another. All eyes slowly, reluctantly, turned to Amaris, the new girl, the one who hadn't built up the seniority to refuse. Amaris felt the blood drain from her face. She wasn't a waitress. Not really. She was, or had been, a forensic accountant. Her mind was built for numbers, for finding the hidden patterns in a sea of data. She was used to quiet offices, long nights, and the precise, logical flow of a balanced ledger. This, the social anxiety, the drama, the performance, was a foreign language. But she needed this job. She needed the anonymity. She needed the cash, hidden away in envelopes under her mattress, for a purpose they couldn't possibly understand. "I'll take him," Amaris said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the room's tension like a knife. Chloe looked at her with a mixture of profound gratitude and pity, as if Amaris had just volunteered to walk into a bear trap. "Are you certain, Miss Hayes?" Henderson asked. "I can pour water and take an order," Amaris said, her voice flatter than she intended. Henderson sighed. "It's not about the order, my dear. It's about the ordeal." "Very well." He tapped his tablet. "Table 12 is yours." For the next 2 hours, Amaris worked her other tables with a mechanical efficiency. She delivered plates, cleared crumbs, and offered dessert, all while a part of her mind was a cold, empty room waiting for the main event. At 6:58 p.m., the hushed murmur of the dining room changed. It wasn't a sound, it was a pressure drop. The air grew colder. At 6:59 p.m., the hostess at the front podium visibly stiffened. At 7:15 p.m., the grand glass doors of the gilded ledge opened and Conrad Prescott walked in. He wasn't a physically imposing man. He was of average height, slender, and dressed in a bespoke suit of such quality that it seemed to absorb the light around him. His hair was a perfect, silvery grey. He looked less like a man and more like a high-concept architectural design. It was his eyes that held the power. They were a pale, arctic blue, and they swept the room with an air of complete and total disinterest, as if he were scanning a warehouse of his own property. He didn't check his coat. He never did. He simply let it fall from his shoulders, and a terrified busboy scrambled to catch it before it touched the floor. He walked, not to be seated, but as if he were an inspector, directly to table 12, the best table in the house, a corner booth with a commanding view of the entire city. He sat down. He did not look at the menu. He simply placed his hands, one on top of the other, on the table. And he waited. "Now," Henderson whispered to Amaris, giving her a small, desperate push. "Go, just apologize for everything, even the air." Amaris grabbed her notepad, took a small, steadying breath, and began the long walk from the server station to table 12. With every step, she could feel the eyes of the entire staff on her back. It was not a walk of shame. It was a walk to an execution. She stopped at the edge of the table. He didn't look up. He was busy scrutinizing a single fork, his lip curled in a tiny, almost imperceptible sneer. "Good evening, sir," Amaris said, her voice clear and low. Conrad Prescott slowly, deliberately, lifted his gaze. His arctic blue eyes met hers, and Amaris felt, for the first time, the full, crushing weight of his attention. It was cold. It was absolute, and it was pure, unadulterated contempt. "And who," he said, his voice a quiet, velvety rasp, "are you supposed to be?" The question hung in the air, weighted with the implication that her very existence was an inconvenience. Amaris held his gaze. She didn't smile. The staff training manual insisted on warm, immediate smiles. Amaris ignored it. "I am Amaris, sir. I will be your server this evening." Conrad Prescott leaned back, a motion so slow and deliberate it was menacing. He surveyed her, from her neatly tied-back brown hair to the immaculate polish on her simple black shoes. It was not the appreciative glance of a man, but the critical assessment of a buyer inspecting livestock. "Amaris," he repeated, tasting the name as if it were a cheap wine. "You're new. I despise new. Is there something I can get for you to drink, Mr. Prescott? A sparkling or still water?" "You've already failed," he said, tapping a single finger on the table. Amaris blinked. "Sir." "You've failed," he repeated, his voice still quiet, forcing her to lean in slightly. You are nervous. Your posture is rigid. You're holding that ridiculous little pad like a shield. And you've asked me a question you should already know the answer to." He gestured to the empty glass on the table. "I drink the same thing, every time. San Pellegrino, at 4 degrees Celsius. Not 3, not 5. 4. With 1 slice of lime, cut to 3 millimeters thick. No seeds. And you will bring the bottle, unopened, and a chilled glass. Is that understood?" "Yes, sir," Amaris said. She wrote nothing down. "And now you're not writing it down. Arrogance, the flip side of incompetence. Which is it, Amaris?" "I have a good memory, sir," she said. His lips thinned. "We shall see. Go." It was a dismissal. Amaris turned and walked to the bar. Mark, the sommelier, was already holding the San Pellegrino bottle, a look of profound pity on his face. "He's in fine form tonight," Mark muttered, handing her the bottle and a glass from the specialty chiller. "I used a digital thermometer on the water. It's exactly 4 degrees. I cut the lime myself. I measured it with a ruler." "Thank you, Mark," Amaris said. She returned to the table. She presented the bottle. She opened it with a crisp hiss. She poured it, the chilled glass frosting instantly. She placed the lime slice on the small glass dish next to his glass. He watched her every move. His eyes darted from her hands to her face, looking for a tremor, a flicker of fear. He found none. Her hands were rock steady. Her expression was one of neutral professionalism. He took a sip. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. He set the glass down. "The bubbles are listless. But I suppose it will have to do." He picked up the menu, glanced at it for a single second, and snapped it shut. "The seared scallops, medium rare. They must be U10. If I see a U12, I will send them back. The risotto must be al dente, not the chalky imitation of al dente your chef prefers. And the truffle oil. Tell the chef if I smell artificial truffle oil, I will hold you personally responsible." "And for your main course?" Amaris asked. "That is my main course. I don't abide by your 3-act structure of a menu. I will have the scallops, and then I will have the fillet. Rare. A true, blue rare. It should be cold in the center. If it is warm, if it is tepid, it goes back. And I will have a side of the haricot verts, unsalted. I will salt them myself. And to drink, would you like to see the wine list?" Amaris asked, knowing Mark was already standing by. Prescott's gaze hardened. "You see, Amaris, you are new. I don't see the wine list. I drink the 2014 Chateau Margaux. Find out if you have it." "We do not have the 2014, sir," Amaris said immediately. His eyes narrowed. "How would you know? You didn't check." "I memorized the inventory from the wine list and the reserve list this afternoon. The computer shows we have the 2015 and the 2010, but the 2014 was sold out last week." A flicker of something crossed his face. It wasn't approval. It was a brief pause in his program of relentless contempt. "The 2015 is adequate, I suppose," he huffed. "Tell Mark to decant it for exactly 30 minutes. Not 29, not 31. 30. "Yes, sir." Amaris turned and walked to the kitchen. The moment the swinging doors closed behind her, she let out the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "He's a nightmare," she whispered to herself. But in the back of her mind, a different voice spoke. "He's not a nightmare. He's a bully, and he's sloppy." She relayed the order to the chef, a famously temperamental man named Pierre, using Prescott's exact words. "This pig!" Pierre hissed. "Blue rare! He wants to eat the cow while it is still mooing, and my risotto is perfect. He would not know al dente if it hit him in his face." "Just make it exactly as he said, please," Amaris said, and I need the scallops to be U10. Pierre glared, but he turned to his station. For you, Amaris. Not for him. For you. You have to stand out there with the monster. The rest of the service was a high-wire act. Amaris delivered the scallops. Prescott poked one with a fork, sliced it in half, and measured it against his thumb. Barely acceptable, he muttered, and took a bite. He chewed, his eyes locked on Amaris. The risotto is passable. He had finished half the dish when he did it. It was so fast, Amaris almost missed it. His hand, holding his water glass, jerked in a motion that was too precise to be an accident. The glass toppled, sending ice-cold 4-degree water and the 3-millimeter lime slice directly into Amaris's lap. She froze. The water was shockingly cold, soaking her apron and the black skirt beneath. Conrad Prescott clicked his tongue. Oh dear. Clumsy me. His eyes were alight with a cold, cruel amusement. He was waiting. He was waiting for her to cry, to get angry, to run off in tears like Brenda. Amaris did not move for a full second. The entire dining room had gone silent. Mr. Henderson looked like he was about to have a heart attack. Slowly, Amaris placed her service tray on a nearby stand. She calmly retrieved a fresh linen napkin from the table, unfolded it, and began to pat the soaked front of her uniform. She didn't look at him. "It's just water, sir," she said, her voice completely, terrifyingly, monotone. "It will dry." She gathered the wet napkin, picked up the fallen glass, and placed it on her tray. "Would you care for another San Pellegrino?" The mask slipped. For a fraction of a second, Conrad Prescott looked genuinely surprised. He had thrown his best punch, and she hadn't even flinched. The amusement in his eyes died, replaced by a new, colder assessment. He had expected a victim. He had found a mirror. "Yes," he said, his voice flat. "I would." As Amaris walked away, he watched her. The game had changed. This wasn't a waitress. This was an opponent. And Conrad Prescott loved to win. Amaris, in the sanctuary of the service station, was trembling, but not from fear. It was rage, a cold, familiar rage she hadn't felt in years. "He's sloppy," she thought again, grabbing a new apron. "He's arrogant. And he's sloppy. And he just made his first mistake. He showed me his hand." She put on the fresh apron, smoothed the front, and prepared for the next round. For the next 2 weeks, Conrad Prescott's 7 p.m. reservation was a given. And with it, a new, unspoken demand. Mr. Prescott's office called, Mr. Henderson announced on a Tuesday, looking paler than usual. He specifically requested Ms. Hayes's section. A collective gasp went up from the staff. Chloe, who had recovered from her migraine, looked at Amaris with sheer terror. "He's requesting you. He's never requested anyone. He usually requests to have people fired." "It's not a compliment, Amaris," Mark warned, adjusting his tie. "It's a hunt. He's found prey that fights back, and he wants a new sport." Amaris just nodded. "I'm aware." She wasn't just aware, she was preparing. In the 2 weeks since their first encounter, Amaris had been doing what she did best: research. She had cross-referenced his reservation times with public SEC filings and shipping manifests. Prescott Industries, his massive, shadowy conglomerate, was on the move. There was a flurry of activity around a new subsidiary, Apex Logistics, a shell company she was certain was designed to swallow a smaller competitor, a competitor just like her father's. Hayes Logistics, she whispered to herself as she polished glasses. The name a bittersweet taste in her mouth. Her father, an honest man named David, had built his small, efficient shipping company from scratch. He had been a pillar of his community. Then, 5 years ago, Prescott Industries had initiated a hostile takeover. It wasn't just business, It was a scorched earth campaign. They'd bled him dry with frivolous lawsuits, poached his clients with predatory pricing, and finally, when he was bankrupt and broken, bought his company's assets for pennies on the dollar. David Hayes had died 6 months later from a heart attack. His doctor called it stress-induced. Amaris called it murder. The police called it business. The courts had agreed. Amaris, then a rising star at a top accounting firm, had seen the truth in the numbers. The takeover was fraudulent, a complex web of shell companies and illegal stock manipulation. But she was just an accountant. She'd tried to bring her findings to the SEC, to journalists, but Prescott's legal team, a veritable army of the nation's most expensive lawyers, had buried her. They'd smeared her, had her fired, and left her with nothing but a burning, ice-cold need for justice. So she had vanished. She'd given up her life, her condo, her name in certain circles, to become Amaris, the quiet waitress. And she'd found the Gilded Ledge, his favorite restaurant. She was here to listen, to watch, to find the one loose thread that would unravel his entire empire. The spilled water hadn't been an insult. It had been an opening. That night, he was waiting. "Amaris," he said, a cold approximation of a smile on his face. "Punctual. I admire that. Mr. Prescott." She laid down the water menu, though she knew he'd ignore it. "San Pellegrino, 4 degrees, 3 millimeter lime," he recited with her. "Let's see if you've been practicing." She served him. The service was a silent war. He would point out a microscopic spot on a spoon. She would replace it before he finished his sentence. He would ask an obscure question about the vineyard's soil composition. She would answer with the exact pH level, which she had forced Mark to look up. He was testing her intelligence, her memory, her breaking point. And with every test she passed, the cold curiosity in his eyes grew. Then came the other waitress, Brenda, the one who had quit and, after 2 months of unemployment, had been forced to crawl back and beg Mr. Henderson for her job. She was ambitious, bitter, and deeply jealous of the attention Amaris was receiving, even this negative, terrifying attention. Brenda watched as Amaris served Prescott's blue rare filet. She saw the way Prescott's eyes followed Amaris, not with a lecher's gaze, but with the intensity of a chess master. "He's going to eat her alive," Brenda muttered to Chloe, "and I'm going to be here for it." The main event happened during the dessert course. Prescott naturally didn't order dessert. He ordered an espresso. "The beans," he said, "must be a single origin Sumatran. I want to smell the volcanic soil. If it's a blend, I'll know." Amaris brought the espresso. As she placed the delicate cup on its saucer, Brenda, carrying a heavy tray of desserts for another table, tripped. It was a clumsy, obvious feint. She stumbled into Amaris, knocking her arm. The tiny cup of scalding black espresso flew from Amaris's hand, not onto the table, and not onto Amaris, but directly onto the pristine, cream-colored trousers of Conrad Prescott. He shot out of his seat with a roar. It was not a quiet complaint. It was a bellow of pure, unadulterated rage. The entire restaurant, every diner, every staff member, froze. "You incompetent fool," he roared, batting at his trousers, now stained a dark, spreading brown. "Are you blind? Are you stupid?" Brenda immediately burst into tears. "Oh my God, Mr. Prescott, I'm so sorry. It was her. She bumped into me. I... Prescott's eyes, burning with a fury Amaris hadn't yet seen, snapped to Amaris. He was looking for her to blame Brenda. He was looking for her to grovel, to cry, to break. Amaris stood perfectly still. She looked at the stain. She looked at the crying Brenda. And then she looked at him. "It was an accident," Amaris said, her voice cutting through the silence. An accident, Prescott seethed. This suit is custom-made. These trousers cost more than your entire year's salary. It was still an accident, Amaris repeated. Brenda, please go get some club soda and a clean cloth. Mr. Henderson, perhaps Mr. Prescott would like a private room to compose himself. She was diverting. She was managing. She was treating him, the billionaire, the monster, like a hysterical child. The humiliation of it, the sheer audacity, struck Prescott harder than the coffee. He looked at her, his face a mask of thunder. He was in a room full of people. He was stained. And this nothing of a waitress, was handling him. But Brenda, seeing her chance, wasn't done. She's awful, she sobbed, pointing at Amaris. She thinks she's better than all of us. She's always making eyes at Mr. Prescott. I think she did it on purpose. She's probably just a gold digger, trying to get his attention. It was a fatal overplay. Prescott's head snapped toward Brenda. His rage, which had been hot, turned instantly to ice. "Get her," he said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "Out of my sight." "What?" Brenda stammered. I said, "Get her out of my sight. She is loud, she is hysterical, and her accusations are as cheap as her perfume." He turned to Mr. Henderson, who had run over. "You will fire her, immediately. If she is here when I return, I will buy this building and have it demolished." Brenda gasped, her face crumbling. But... "Now," Prescott hissed. Henderson, looking like he was going to be sick, grabbed Brenda's arm and pulled her, sobbing, toward the kitchen. Conrad Prescott stared at Amaris in the sudden, ringing silence. He was breathing heavily. The front of his trousers was ruined. "Well," he said, a strange, dangerous light in his eyes. "That was a scene." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a thick, black leather wallet, and extracted not $100 bill, but a pristine black American Express Centurion card. "You," he said, "will go to the Brioni boutique on the ground floor of this building. You will tell them my suit needs to be repaired or replaced. They know who I am." "Sir," Amaris said, "I can't leave the floor." "You are not leaving the floor," he said, as if explaining something to a simpleton. He was enjoying this. "I am buying your time, for the rest of the night. You work for me now. Go." He tossed the card onto the table. It landed with a heavy, expensive clack. Amaris looked at the card. It was a test, a power play, a trap. If she took it, she was his. If she didn't, he would have her fired for insubordination. She looked at him, and for the first time, she smiled. It was a tiny, sharp smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sir," she said, "I can't accept this. It's against restaurant policy." She gently, using her thumb and forefinger, slid the black card back across the table toward him. "But," she continued, "I have already called the Brioni boutique. They were informed of your 7 p.m. reservation, as per your standing order. They have a replacement pair of trousers in your exact size on standby for just such an eventuality. They are on their way up." The blood drained from Conrad Prescott's face. She had known. She had anticipated. She had prepared for him to be a slob. She hadn't just reacted. She had been 3 steps ahead. His fury was gone, replaced by a profound, chilling silence. He stared at her, really stared at her. "Who?" he whispered, so quietly she could barely hear him. "In the hell are you?" Amaris's smile vanished as quickly as it had come. "I'm your server, Mr. Prescott. I'll get you another espresso. On the house." She turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone, stained and momentarily speechless in the middle of the dining room. The rest of the night was a blur. Henderson, after profusely thanking Amaris, had to deal with the fallout of Brenda's dismissal. The staff gave Amaris a wide berth, a new kind of respect mixed with a healthy dosec of fear. She was no longer just the new girl. She was the one who survived. But Amaris wasn't celebrating. As she changed out of her uniform in the staff locker room, the adrenaline of the confrontation faded, leaving only the cold, hard clarity of her mission. Brenda's accusation, gold digger, had been a wild, jealous guess, but it had given Prescott an idea. He hadn't seen her as a gold digger before. He had seen her as an anomaly, a puzzle. Now he would see her as something he understood, a transaction. He would try to buy her. And that, Amaris thought, could be very useful. She didn't live in a small, sparse apartment. That was a misconception of the undercover. Anonymity was expensive. Amaris lived in a clean, secure, but utterly unremarkable corporate apartment in a different borough, registered under a name, Sarah Jenkins, that didn't exist. The apartment's living room was her real office. One wall was not covered in string. That was for movies. Her wall was a 10-foot whiteboard covered in flowcharts, company structures, and timelines written in black, red, and blue, dry erase marker. It was a meticulous map of Conrad Prescott's criminal empire. In the center, Prescott Industries. Branching off it, dozens of LLCs and shell corporations. And there, circled in red, Apex Logistics. She booted up her laptop, a nondescript model she'd bought for cash, and connected to a secure, encrypted network. Her true partner in this wasn't a journalist, not yet. He was a man named Matthew Doyle, but he wasn't a reporter. He was a disgraced, disbarred lawyer. He had been Prescott's lawyer. Matthew had been the one to orchestrate the Hayes Logistics takeover. He had been the architect of her father's ruin. And then, as all tools of Conrad Prescott eventually are, he had been discarded. When a rival firm threatened to expose the very tactics Prescott had ordered, Prescott had thrown Matthew to the wolves, claiming he was a rogue agent, and feeding the Bar Association the evidence they needed to disbar him. It had taken Amaris a year to find him, living in a small town upstate, drinking himself into oblivion. "I don't want your forgiveness," she had told him, standing in his dusty, bourbon-scented living room. "I don't even want your apology. I want your memory. I want your help to burn him to the ground." Matthew, hollowed out by guilt and a thirst for his own revenge, had agreed. A video call popped up. Matthew's face appeared, grainy and tired. "You're late," he grunted. "I had a spill at work," Amaris said dryly. "What have you found on Apex?" "It's just like you thought," Matthew said, his voice gaining energy. "He's not just swallowing a competitor. He's planning a merger. He's going to package Apex, which is nothing but debt and a few leased warehouses, with another, legitimate logistics company. He'll use the merger to inflate the stock. Then he and his private investors will dump it before the first quarterly report. It's a classic pump and dump, but on a corporate billion-dollar scale." "He needs a legitimate partner," Amaris mused, tapping her pen on her notepad. "Who is it?" "That's the part I can't find. He's kept it clean. The target company's name isn't on any of the paperwork. But the merger announcement, it's soon. I can feel it. He's hosting a big investors' dinner next Monday. At your place." Amaris's blood went cold. "The Apex Investors' Dinner. It's on the books. They've bought out the entire restaurant. We're all required to work." "Amaris," Matthew said, leaning into the camera, his eyes intense. "This is it. This is the night. The investors he's roping in. They're not his usual crowd. They're foreign money, some old guard institutional funds. If he's lying to them, this isn't just an SEC fine. This is wire fraud, racketeering. This is prison. He'll have his lawyers there," Amaris said, thinking aloud. his personal counsel, Albert. They'll review the final documents at the dinner. It's theatrical, but it's how he shows his power. If you could get those documents, Amaris, Matthew whispered, a copy of the final unredacted merger agreement. We could get it to the Times and the U.S. Attorney's Office at the same time. We could detonate the whole thing right in his face. Get the documents, Amaris repeated, from a private dinner, while I'm serving them scallops. Matthew, that's impossible. Is it? You got a job there, didn't you? You got his attention, didn't you? He's obsessed with you. He's obsessed with his little game. But you're not playing his game. You're playing yours. You just need to be in that room. Amaris looked at her whiteboard. She looked at her father's name, written in the corner under the heading, Victims. He'll have security, she said. Security's a joke, Matthew countered. It's for show. They're checking for weapons, not for waitresses. His real security is his arrogance. He doesn't believe anyone could touch him, especially not the help. A cold, hard plan began to form in Amaris's mind, a plan that was audacious, dangerous, and utterly terrifying. He tried to buy me tonight, Amaris said quietly. Brenda, another waitress, called me a gold digger. It gave him the wrong idea. Wrong idea, Matthew scoffed. Or the right one? Amaris, what are you thinking? He thinks I'm a transaction. He's going to offer me money, a car, an apartment. He's going to do it to see me break, to see me finally admit I'm just like everyone else. And what are you going to do? Amaris looked up, and for the first time, Matthew saw the ghost of the high-powered accountant she used to be. Her eyes were sharp, calculating, and absolutely merciless. I'm going to negotiate. The next day, Amaris didn't wait for Prescott's 7 p.m. reservation. At 3 p.m. during the mid-service lull, a package arrived at the Gilded Ledge. It was a long, flat box from a high-end designer, addressed personally to Amaris Hayes. Inside, nestled in black tissue paper, was a stunning, simple, and astronomically expensive black dress. It was not a waitress uniform. It was a statement. Tucked into the folds was a single, heavy stock card. Tonight, don't wear the apron. 7 p.m. C.P. Chloe, who saw the dress, gasped. Amaris, what is that? It's a trap, Amaris said simply, closing the box. It's a dress, Chloe countered, her eyes wide. It's beautiful. What are you going to do? I'm going to wear it, Amaris said. Mr. Henderson was, predictably, apoplectic. Miss Hayes, you cannot. It is against uniform policy. You are a server. Mr. Henderson, Amaris said, meeting his panicked gaze with a calm one of her own. Tonight I am not a server. I am, it seems, a guest. Mr. Prescott is our biggest investor. He has made a request. Are you going to be the one to tell him no? Henderson's mouth opened and closed. He knew, as Amaris did, that Prescott held the lease on the restaurant space. He could close them down with a single phone call. Just be careful, he whispered, a new paternal fear in his eyes. At 7 p.m. the restaurant doors opened. Conrad Prescott walked in, and for the first time he smiled, a real, genuine smile. Amaris was waiting, not at a service station, but at table 12. She was wearing the dress. It fit perfectly. Amaris, he said, his voice smooth as velvet. He slid into the booth, not across from her, but next to her. It was a violation of space, a deliberate act of intimacy. Amaris did not move away. Mr. Prescott, she said. Conrad, he corrected. Tonight we are Conrad and Amaris. He signaled, and Mark, his face a mask of confusion, appeared. The 2015 Margot, Conrad said. 2 glasses. This is highly irregular, Amaris said, her voice low. I am a highly irregular man. And you, Amaris, are a highly irregular waitress. Or, are you a waitress at all? Here it was. The game. I am what I need to be, Amaris said. I've had you looked into, he said, casually sipping his water. Amaris Hayes, born in Ohio, community college, a few temp jobs, clean record, boring. It's a very, very good fake identity. Amaris's heart hammered in her chest, but she didn't let it show. I don't know what you mean. Oh, I think you do. The memory, the posture, the complete and total lack of fear. You're not a waitress. You're something else. A corporate spy, perhaps, hired by a rival. Leonard Shaw, maybe? That oaf. Is this his play? You have a vivid imagination, Amaris said. And you have my attention, Conrad countered. The wine arrived. He raised his glass. So, let's stop playing. I don't care who you are or who you're working for. Because, as of tonight, you're working for me. He reached into his breast pocket and produced, not a card, but a check. He placed it on the table. It was a certified bank check, made out to Amaris Hayes. The amount was $250,000. A signing bonus, he said. Amaris looked at the check. It was more money than she had seen in one place in years. It was enough to disappear, to start a new life, to give up this insane, dangerous quest. She pushed the check back to him. $250,000, he mused. Most women would be grateful. Clearly I've underestimated you. He tore the check in half. My mistake. It's not about the money, Amaris said. Oh, it's always about the money, my dear. You're just holding out for a better offer. He leaned in closer. The smell of his expensive cologne was suffocating. Tell me what you want. A condo at the new high-rise? The keys to a new Porsche? Just name it. I'm bored, Amaris. And you're the first interesting thing to happen to me since my divorce. He mentioned his ex-wife, Genevieve. Amaris filed that away. A new piece of the puzzle. What do I want? Amaris said, turning to finally look him full in the face. I want to know why. He blinked. Why what? Why you do it? Why you come in here, terrorize the staff, break people down? What's the point? He laughed. A real, barking laugh. The point? The point is to see if they'll break. It's a test of character, of strength. The world is full of weak, sniveling, incompetent people, Amaris. Like that. Brenda. They deserve to be broken. You don't break. You're made of steel. I admire that. I want to own that. You can't own me, Conrad. I can own anything, he said, his smile vanishing. I'm offering you a new life, a life out of that costume you wear every night. I know what you are. You're like me. You're a predator, stuck in a cage of service. I'm offering you the key. And what do I have to do for this key? Nothing, he said. At first, just be available, be with me, attend dinners, laugh at my jokes, look beautiful, and report to me. Tell me what my rivals are doing. You're smart. You can find things out. I'll make you my private attaché. He was offering her a job, a spy, his own spy. The irony was so thick, Amaris almost choked on it. And if I say no, then I will have you fired, he said simply. And I will have you blacklisted from every restaurant, every hotel, every establishment in this city. You will be serving cold coffee at a truck stop in the desert by next week. Your Sarah Jenkins identity will be flagged by every credit agency. You will cease to exist. It was the checkmate. He had her. Amaris looked down at her hands. She let a single, calculated tear well in her eye. She let it fall. I just, she stammered, playing the part of the overwhelmed, cornered woman. I don't know what to say. He mistook her silence for surrender. His demeanor softened. There's nothing to say. You've made the smart choice. He pulled another card from his wallet. This one, a key. A simple, black electronic key card. There's a penthouse. In my building. Not the one I live in. Don't be silly. An investment property. It's yours. As long as you're loyal. Amaris's hand trembled as she reached out. She let her fingers brush his as she took the key. Good girl, he said, patting her hand. Now, we have a dinner to attend. Monday. The Apex Investors Dinner. You'll be coming, but not as a server. You'll be at my side. Amaris's heart leapt. It's too easy. It's a trap. At your side? She said. But I'm a waitress. What will your investors think? I will tell them you are my new consultant, a specialist in logistics. He smiled, clearly proud of his own cleverness. Which, in a way, you are. You'll be in the room. You'll hear everything. It will be your first test to see how well you listen. He had just handed her the keys to the kingdom. He thought he was testing her loyalty. He had no idea he was arming his own executioner. I'll be there, Conrad, Amaris whispered, closing her hand around the key. I know you will, he said, finishing his wine. Now, tell me, Amaris, what do you know about Leonard Shaw's shipping routes? The next few days were the longest of Amaris's life. She moved into the penthouse. It was a sterile glass and chrome cage on the 80th floor, a clear symbol of his ownership. She played the part, meeting Conrad for dinners, smiling and listening. At night, she used his own high-speed Wi-Fi to communicate with Matthew Doyle. I'm in, she typed. He's parading me. He's called me his logistics specialist. He's seating me at the main table. Matthew's reply was instant. Amaris, this is a trap. He's not this stupid. You're wrong, she typed back. He is exactly this stupid. His ego is his fatal flaw. He thinks he's a god. He thinks I'm his new toy. He doesn't realize I'm a bomb. So what's the play? Matthew asked. How do you get the documents? His lawyer Albert will have them, Amaris explained. A deal bag. It will contain the final signature-ready merger agreement and a hard drive with the fraudulent due diligence. I don't need to steal it. I just need a copy. She explained the plan. Conrad had foolishly gifted her a high-speed data cloner disguised as a sleek USB drive. I accidentally knock over a drink. I help Albert clean up his briefcase. I mistakenly pick up his hard drive. I plug this in. 5 seconds is all it needs. It copies the entire drive. He'll never even know. There was a pause. It's audacious. It's insane. It's perfect, Matthew replied. But what about the other part of the plan? The other part is in motion, Amaris typed. I made the call. She had used a burner phone. She'd found the number in Conrad's own phone, which he'd left charging. Genevieve P. Do not answer. A woman with a voice like dry ice had answered. My name doesn't matter, Amaris had said. What matters is that I'm having dinner with your ex-husband on Monday. He's announcing the Apex Logistics merger. A sharp intake of breath. That merger. My lawyers said it was dead. It's not, Amaris said, and I have a feeling the assets he's using to fund it are the same assets he forgot to declare in your divorce settlement. Silence. Then, why are you telling me this? Because he's a monster, Amaris said. The Gilded Ledge. 9 p.m. he'll be signing the papers. Be there. Bring your lawyers. The line had clicked dead. She'll be there, Amaris typed to Matthew. She has her own score to settle. God, Amaris, Matthew replied. The Times article is ready. I'm on standby. The U.S. Attorney's Office has my research. The second you upload that drive's contents, I hit publish. We just need the smoking gun that signed agreement." "Then it's set," Amaris said. "Tonight, the performance of a lifetime." Monday night. The gilded ledge was transformed. The normal tables were gone, replaced by one massive, U-shaped table draped in black linen. It looked less like a dinner and more like a meeting of a secret society. Amaris stood in front of the mirror in the penthouse. She wore a simple, elegant, dark blue dress. Tucked into her small clutch was the data cloner. Conrad entered, adjusting his bow tie. He looked at her and beamed. He looked proud. "Perfect," he said. "Absolutely perfect. You, my dear, are my secret weapon." "I aim to please, Conrad," Amaris said, her voice a perfect blend of deference and intelligence. "Tonight, Amaris," he said, offering her his arm. "We make history. We're going to make so much money. It's almost indecent." "Almost," Amaris agreed, taking his arm. As they rode the private elevator down to the restaurant, Amaris's heart was a cold, steady drumbeat. This isn't for money, she thought, her hand tightening on her clutch. This isn't for a company. This is for David Hayes. This is for my father. They entered the dining room. The investors, a collection of humorless, expensive men, all rose. Conrad's lawyer, Albert, a small, nervous man, was already at the table, his polished leather briefcase sitting primly by his chair. "Gentlemen," Conrad boomed, "welcome, and please allow me to introduce my new associate, the brilliant Miss Amaris Hayes, my logistics specialist." All eyes turned to her, cold, assessing, dismissive eyes. She was, to them, just the beautiful woman on the billionaire's arm. "Good evening, gentlemen," Amaris said, a small, perfect smile on her face. The trap was set. The players were in place. The dinner began. The dinner was an agonizing, 3-hour performance. Conrad was in his element, holding court and boasting, his voice slick with the promise of impossible returns. Amaris sat beside him, a portrait of attentive beauty, and watched the clock. At 8:45 p.m., as the main courses were cleared, Conrad stood, raising his glass. "Gentlemen, to the future, to Apex Logistics." He nodded to Albert. The lawyer, his hands trembling, placed his briefcase on the table and clicked it open. He removed a stack of thick, leather-bound documents and a small, sleek external hard drive. "The final merger agreements," Albert announced, "and the full due diligence data room, as requested." He passed the documents. Conrad took his, uncapped a large, gold-plated fountain pen, and looked at Amaris. "You see, Amaris, a new era." He was about to sign. Amaris took a sharp breath. "Oh, Conrad," she said, her voice just loud enough to make him pause. "You're so dramatic. You've made my hands tremble." She accidentally knocked her full wine glass. But she didn't knock it onto Conrad. She knocked it directly onto Albert and his open briefcase. A splash of deep red Margot flooded the table, soaking Albert's shirt, the papers, and, most importantly, the hard drive. "Oh no," Amaris cried, genuine-sounding panic in her voice. "Albert, I am so sorry. Your drive." "Gah!" Albert yelped, leaping back. "My files! The drive!" "Here, let me help," Amaris said, grabbing a handful of napkins. She fumbled and, accidentally, grabbed the wine-soaked drive. "Oh dear, it's soaked. Let me dry it." She turned her back for a fraction of a second, as if to shield her work. In that instant, her hands moved with a surgeon's speed. Clutch open. Cloner out. Plug. Vibrate. The cloner vibrated in her hand. 3 seconds. Copy complete. She turned back, wiping the drive with a napkin. "Here," she said, handing the drive back to the dazed Albert. "I think it's fine. It's just wine." The entire sequence had taken less than 5 seconds. Conrad was furious. "Amaris, you clumsy!" "It's all right, Conrad," one of the German investors said, annoyed. "Let us just sign. The drive is fine." Conrad, seething, sat down. "Yes, of course." He uncapped his pen. Amaris, meanwhile, had her hand in her clutch. She was pressing upload on her burner phone, sending the cloned drive's contents, the real financials, the ones that showed Apex was a hollow shell, to Matthew's secure server. Upload complete. Conrad signed his name with a flourish. There, a new Bizzetti. A phone on the table vibrated. The German investor's. He looked at it, his brow furrowing. Bizzetti! Bizzetti! Another phone, and another. All at once, the investors' phones, which had been silent, lit up with a news alert. "What is this?" the Japanese investor said, his voice suddenly cold. He held up his phone. The headline was from the New York Times, published 30 seconds ago. "Prescott Industries and Apex Logistics at center of massive fraud investigation. Sources allege pump and dump scheme." The article contained everything: scanned documents, offshore account numbers, and the entire contents of the fraudulent due diligence hard drive, annotated to show the lies. Conrad Prescott's face went from red to a sickly, mottled white. What is this?" he stammered, grabbing his own phone. "It's a lie. It's Leonard Shaw." "The article," the German investor said, his voice lethally calm, "appears to contain the fraudulent financials from your hard drive." Albert, the lawyer, looked at the drive, then at Amaris. His face crumpled in dawning, catastrophic understanding. "You," Conrad whispered, turning to Amaris. His face was a mask of pure, uncomprehending hatred. "Me?" Amaris said, standing up. Her voice was no longer the soft, deferential tone of a consultant. It was clear, cold, and echoed with authority. "I'm just a waitress, Conrad, remember?" You bitch!" he roared, lunging for her. He never made it. "I wouldn't," said a new, cold voice. The grand doors of the gilded ledge burst open. It wasn't the hostess, it was 2 U.S. Marshals, and behind them, a woman Amaris had only seen in photos. She was beautiful, blonde, and looked like she was carved from marble. Genevieve Prescott. "Conrad," Genevieve said, her voice ringing with satisfaction. "You look surprised." "Genevieve," he gasped. "You can't be here." "Oh, I can," she said, flanked by her own 2 lawyers. "You see, while you were busy defrauding these gentlemen, you were also hiding marital assets. Billions of them. The ones you swore to a federal judge didn't exist. The ones you used to fund. Apex." She gestured to one of the marshals. "He's all yours, officer. Based on the new evidence." She smiled at Amaris. "And the emergency injunction I just received. All assets of Conrad Prescott, Prescott Industries, and Apex Logistics are hereby frozen, pending a criminal investigation into fraud." "No," Conrad screamed. It was a pathetic, broken sound. "No, you can't. I am Conrad Prescott." "You're a common thief," Genevieve said, "and you're going to prison." The marshals grabbed his arms. He didn't fight. He just deflated. The power, the arrogance, all drained away, leaving only a small, pale, trembling man. As the marshals led him away, his eyes found Amaris's. "Why?" he whispered. Amaris walked over to him. She leaned in, so only he could hear. "My name," she said, "is Amaris Hayes. My father was David Hayes. You destroyed his company. You destroyed his life." His eyes widened in recognition. "Hayes? Logistics? You called him weak. You said he deserved to be broken." Amaris's voice was soft, but it was harder than steel. "You were wrong. He was the strongest man I ever knew. This was for him." She stepped back. The marshals pulled him out of the room. The room was in chaos. Investors were yelling. Mr. Henderson was in the corner, looking like he was going to faint. Amaris looked at the chaos. She walked to the server station, where her old, starched apron still hung. She picked it up, folded it neatly, and placed it on the counter. She looked at Mr. Henderson, who was stunned, and gave him a small, sad smile. Then she turned. She walked past Genevieve Prescott, who nodded at her, a silent acknowledgement. She walked through the dining room, past the panicked investors, and out the grand glass doors into the cool, clean night air. She didn't look back. Conrad Prescott was found guilty on 12 counts of fraud and racketeering. His empire was dismantled, and his assets, thanks to Amaris's evidence, were seized and redistributed to the hundreds of victims he and his company had destroyed over the decades. Genevieve Prescott, it turned out, used her portion of the settlement to create a relief fund for the families, including Amaris's. And Amaris? She was never seen at the Gilded Ledge again. Some say she used her share of the whistleblower reward to finally take a vacation. Others say she's teaching forensic accounting at a top university, training a new generation to catch the monsters. But the staff at the restaurant, they just smile. They still talk about the new waitress who didn't flinch, the one who took on the billionaire and won, proving that sometimes the person you think is the help is actually the one in charge. What did you think of Amaris's story? Her quest for justice shows that no matter how powerful a bully is, one person with enough courage and a brilliant plan can bring them down. We hope you enjoyed this story of drama, twists, and ultimate revenge. If you did, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss a new story from us. We want to hear from you, so leave a comment below. Tell us, what was your favorite part of Amaris's plan?